Kara, do we have a ruling in the Donald Trump civil fraud trial case?
Yeah, we do, Boris. When I'm looking at these numbers, the totals that the judge is ordering collectively in the case, so this will include all of the defendants, I'm getting a total of $362 million. Can see that the dollar amount specific to Donald Trump, about $354 million. That's for him, the company, the Trump organization.
Donald Trump is literally exploding right now because we need to talk about how Donald Trump's financial empire could actually collapse if New York Attorney General Letitia James makes a move that Trump absolutely does not see coming. And this could be the move that ultimately destroys Trump's ability to fight back against the mounting legal pressures. If James goes after Trump's last accessible assets, the money and properties that Trump thinks are safe, the accounts he thinks are hidden, the real estate he thinks is protected, Trump could lose everything. Every penny, every property, everything Trump has left that isn't already frozen or under court control could be seized. And here's what makes this absolutely devastating. This could happen because Trump may fail to post a bond for the $464 million fraud judgment from his 2023 conviction. Let me explain what that means. Back in 2023, Judge Arthur Engoron ruled that Trump committed massive fraud by inflating his property values to get better loans and insurance rates. And Engoron ordered Trump to pay $464 million to New York as a penalty. But Trump appealed that judgment, and under New York law, if you appeal a judgment, you can delay payment by posting a bond. The bond has to cover the full judgment amount plus interest. So Trump needs to post around $500 million to stop New York from collecting while his appeal is pending. But real quick, let's be honest. You can't really trust mainstream media nowadays. That's why we built National Brief Network to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, please subscribe because you might think you are but aren't. Your subscription actually matters here. All right, let's get into what could actually happen. Trump claims he's working with bond companies to get that bond. His lawyers keep saying it's coming soon any day now. But if weeks go by, then months, and no bond appears, Letitia James could say enough is enough. If Trump has had plenty of time to post a bond and hasn't done it, New York could move forward with collection. And if James doesn't mess around, she could immediately file seizure orders in Westchester County where Trump owns several properties. And she could file freezes on every bank account connected to Trump that New York can identify. Now let me walk you through what could happen if those orders get executed. U.S. Marshals and New York State enforcement officers could show up at Trump properties with court orders. They could secure the buildings. They could freeze the accounts. And they could inform Trump that these assets now belong to the state of New York pending sale to satisfy the fraud judgment. Share this video with everyone you know, because here's why this potential seizure would be so devastating for Trump. Trump has been counting on keeping some assets liquid and accessible while he fights all his legal battles. He needs money for lawyers, for bond payments, for living expenses, for paying the employees at his remaining properties. Trump thinks he has enough cash reserves and unencumbered properties to weather the storm. But if Letitia James makes this move, she could cut off Trump's financial lifeline. And here's what makes it even worse. The Westchester properties that could get seized include the Trump National Golf Club and several residential properties that Trump uses as income sources. These aren't just assets sitting there. These are operating businesses generating revenue. And that revenue is funding Trump's legal defense and keeping his organization running. But once New York seizes the properties, if that happens, that revenue stream would disappear. The golf club couldn't operate while under state control. The residential properties couldn't collect rent. All that money would be gone. Think about what that means. And the frozen bank accounts could represent Trump's last liquid cash reserves. Multiple sources estimate Trump could have between $75 million and $100 million in those accounts. Money in various banks under different entity names. And if James finds all of it and freezes all of it, Trump could go from having enough money to fight his legal battles to having basically nothing in a matter of hours. And Trump's reaction would be exactly what you'd expect: pure rage. Trump would likely post on Truth Social dozens of times calling Letitia James corrupt, claiming this is political persecution, claiming New York is stealing his property. But here's the thing. If James takes this action, she wouldn't be stealing anything. She would be enforcing a court judgment. Trump was ordered to pay $464 million for committing fraud. If Trump refuses to pay and fails to post a bond, New York would have every legal right to seize assets to satisfy the judgment. That's how court judgments work. If you lose in court and don't pay, your assets get seized. It's not persecution, it's consequences. Make sure you're subscribed to National Brief Network, because now let's talk about the specific assets that could get seized. The Westchester County seizures could include Trump National Golf Club Westchester. This is one of Trump's major golf properties. It hosts tournaments, it has a wealthy membership, it generates significant revenue. And if New York seizes it, the state could appoint a receiver to take control of the property and manage it pending sale. And that receiver could immediately suspend all Trump Organization operations at the club. Trump's name could come off the property. Trump's management team could be removed, and the club could be prepared for sale at auction. New York would want to sell this property as quickly as possible to generate cash to pay down the judgment, and real estate experts estimate the golf club could sell for $75 to $100 million. That's a substantial chunk of the $464 million Trump owes, but it's not nearly enough, so James would go after more assets. The Westchester seizures could also include several residential properties that Trump owns in the county, investment properties that Trump uses to rent out for income, and those properties could also be prepared for auction. But here's where it gets interesting. The frozen bank accounts that James could identify aren't just personal accounts. They could be accounts belonging to various Trump Organization entities, shell companies, LLCs, trusts. Trump has a complex web of corporate entities designed to shield assets from creditors and legal judgments, but James has been investigating Trump's finances for years. She knows how the shell game works, she knows which entities are actually Trump's despite being registered under different names. And if she goes after all of them, the courts could back her up. Judges could rule that these shell entities are Trump's alter egos, that they exist solely to hide Trump's assets from creditors, and that creditors can pierce the corporate veil and seize assets from these entities. So Trump's entire corporate structure could be dismantled, and every account connected to that structure could be frozen and seized. Now here's what makes this potential action even more significant. This wouldn't just be about Westchester County properties and New York bank accounts. James could also file enforcement notices in other jurisdictions. Specifically, James could file notices in Florida targeting Mar-a-Lago and in New York City targeting Trump Tower. Now, those filings might not result in immediate seizures like the Westchester properties would. Why? Because Mar-a-Lago is in Florida and Trump Tower is in Manhattan. And enforcing New York judgments in other jurisdictions requires additional legal steps. But if James puts those properties on notice and files the paperwork saying that New York intends to enforce its judgment against those properties, that would create liens. Legal claims that attach to the properties and prevent Trump from selling or transferring them without satisfying the New York judgment first. So even though Mar-a-Lago and Trump Tower might not be physically seized immediately, they could become encumbered. Trump couldn't sell them, couldn't refinance them, couldn't use them as collateral for loans. They would be effectively locked down by New York's liens. And that could destroy Trump's last financial options. Share this with everyone, because here's what Trump could be trying to do if this situation develops. Trump could attempt to refinance Mar-a-Lago and Trump Tower to raise cash to pay his judgments and fund his legal defenses. He could negotiate with lenders shopping for anyone who would give him a loan secured by these properties. And some lenders might actually consider it despite Trump's legal troubles. Because Mar-a-Lago and Trump Tower are valuable properties. They could potentially secure large loans. But once James files those enforcement notices and creates the liens, the refinancing deals would die. No lender will loan money on a property that has a $464 million judgment lien attached to it. Because if Trump defaults, New York gets paid first from any sale proceeds. The lender would be second in line. And given Trump's financial situation, there probably wouldn't be enough money left to pay the lender. So the lenders would all walk away. Trump's refinancing plans would collapse. And that would be the moment Trump's financial situation becomes truly unsalvageable. And there's another dimension to this that's really important. If these seizures happen, they could expose hidden financial maneuvers that Trump has been using to hide assets from creditors. During enforcement proceedings, James's investigators could find evidence that Trump has been moving money between accounts, transferring properties between entities, creating new shell companies to receive assets, all in an attempt to put money beyond the reach of New York's judgment. And that would be fraudulent conveyance. It's illegal to hide assets from creditors when you owe them money under a court judgment, and judges take that very seriously. If evidence of Trump's asset hiding comes out, Judge Engoron could issue additional orders. He could freeze not just the accounts James identified, but any account that Trump touched in the previous 6 months. Any transfer Trump made in the past year could be subject to clawback, which means New York could reverse those transfers and seize the assets. So Trump's attempts to hide money could actually make his situation worse, because he could face potential criminal charges for fraudulent conveyance on top of everything else. and all the money he tried to hide could be seized anyway. Now let's talk about what Trump's legal response might be if these seizures happen. Trump's lawyers would likely file emergency motions asking judges to stop the seizures. They would argue that New York is moving too aggressively, that Trump needs more time to arrange financing, that seizing the properties would cause irreparable harm to Trump's businesses. But here's the thing, judges could reject every motion. Why? Because Trump would have had months to post a bond and didn't do it. Because Trump's claims about arranging financing might not be credible given that no lender would work with him. And because the harm to Trump's businesses is not the court's concern. Trump committed fraud. He was ordered to pay. If he doesn't pay, New York gets to seize assets. That's the law. And Trump's arguments about political persecution wouldn't work either. Judges would say that Letitia James is enforcing a legitimate court judgment. She's doing her job. This isn't persecution. It's law enforcement. And Trump's political status doesn't give him immunity from court judgments. So all of Trump's legal challenges could fail. The seizures could stand, and Trump could lose his last accessible assets. Now here's where it gets really interesting, and here's the broader impact this could have. If these seizures happen, they would send a signal to everyone in Trump's orbit, to his remaining lawyers, to his business partners, to his political allies. The signal would be that Trump is financially toxic, that anyone who associates with Trump financially is going to get burned. Because New York is coming after everything, and they're not stopping until they collect every penny of that $464 million judgment. And that signal could cause a cascade of defections. Law firms that are representing Trump could start withdrawing. They could file motions to quit the cases saying Trump can't pay their fees. Business partners could start terminating contracts with Trump. They wouldn't want to be associated with someone whose assets are being seized by the state. Political donors could stop giving money to Trump-aligned candidates. They would see Trump as a liability. Someone who can't manage his own finances couldn't be trusted to manage campaign funds. This financial collapse could destroy Trump's ability to function politically and legally. Because think about what could happen. If New York seizes Trump's Westchester properties and freezes his accessible bank accounts, Trump's entire operation could crumble. Multiple law firms could file motions to withdraw from representing Trump. Deutsche Bank could accelerate its loan repayment demands because Trump's financial situation has deteriorated so severely. The IRS could announce tax evasion audit findings. Everything could explode simultaneously. It would all be connected, and it could all trace back to potential asset seizures, because those seizures could destroy Trump's ability to fight back. Without money, Trump couldn't hire lawyers, couldn't post bonds, couldn't negotiate with creditors, couldn't maintain his political operation. He would be defenseless. And once prosecutors and creditors realize Trump is defenseless, they could all pounce at once. So what does all of this mean for understanding Trump's potential collapse? First, it shows that financial leverage is power. Trump's entire career was built on leveraging other people's money. He borrowed from banks defaulted on loans declared bankruptcy, but always bounced back because he had access to capital. Banks would lend to him because he had valuable properties to use as collateral. But if New York seizes his properties and freezes his accounts, that leverage would disappear. Trump would have no collateral left, no cash to offer, nothing. And without financial leverage, Trump would have no power. He couldn't fight legal battles, couldn't maintain his business empire, couldn't fund political operations. The seizures could destroy Trump's foundation of power. And once that foundation cracks, everything built on top of it could collapse. Second, it shows how civil judgments can destroy someone even before criminal charges hit. Trump is facing criminal prosecutions for various alleged crimes. But even before those criminal cases resolve, the civil fraud judgment from New York could destroy him financially. $464 million is a lot of money even for someone who claimed to be a billionaire. And if Trump can't pay and New York starts seizing assets, everything could unravel. The civil judgment could create financial pressure that cascades into criminal exposure. Because once Trump's finances are under scrutiny for the civil fraud case, investigators could find evidence of other potential crimes. The civil case could open the door to criminal cases, and the asset seizures from the civil judgment could leave Trump with no resources to defend against criminal charges. Third, it shows the importance of state-level enforcement. Letitia James is a state attorney general, not federal. She doesn't work for the Justice Department. She works for New York, and she uses New York state law to go after Trump for fraud that occurred in New York. This is significant because Trump may have political connections at the federal level that might protect him from federal prosecution. But those connections don't help against state charges. New York doesn't answer to the federal government. James doesn't answer to the president or Congress. She answers to New York voters. And she could use that independence to pursue Trump aggressively. And if she executes asset seizures that could prove that state enforcement can be just as powerful as federal enforcement when it comes to holding powerful people accountable. Fourth, this potential timeline shows that Trump's collapse isn't inevitable. It would require aggressive enforcement by determined prosecutors. Letitia James could wait longer before seizing assets. She could give Trump more time to arrange financing. She could negotiate a payment plan. But if she doesn't and moves aggressively to collect the judgment as soon as Trump fails to post a bond, that aggressive enforcement could trigger a cascade of events that destroys Trump. If James is less aggressive, Trump might find some way to refinance or restructure or delay long enough to survive. But if James doesn't give him that opportunity and hits hard and fast, Trump might never recover. The bottom line is this. If Trump fails to post the required bond for the $464 million New York fraud judgment, Letitia James could move to seize his assets. She could target his Westchester properties, including Trump National Golf Club. She could freeze his accessible bank accounts, potentially $75 to $100 million. She could file enforcement notices against Mar-a-Lago and Trump Tower, creating liens that prevent Trump from selling or refinancing. She could expose his hidden asset transfers and pursue fraudulent conveyance charges. And she could destroy his ability to finance his legal defenses and political operations. If all of this happens, Trump's financial foundation would crumble. Without money, he couldn't hire lawyers, couldn't post bonds, couldn't negotiate with creditors, couldn't resist prosecution. The seizures could be the first domino, and once that domino falls, everything else could come crashing down. This could be what Trump's financial collapse looks like if enforcement proceeds. This could be how civil judgments destroy someone's ability to fight back. This could be consequences finally catching up. This story continues. Stay tuned.